There's no doubt that Kevin Harvick has been one of the top drivers in the Cup Series ever since he joined Stewart-Haas Racing. But how good exactly has he been? And how does his stats at SHR compare to when he was still driving for Richard Childress Racing? Let's take a look at the 6 full years Kevin has driven for Stewart-Haas and really break down those numbers. When Kevin Harvick joined Stewart-Haas Racing in 2014, it was a shock to many, especially Richard Childress Racing, because he had left the team that he had been with his whole career, and a lot of people didn't know if he was going to be able to have the same success as he did there, but, well, I'd say it turned out fine. In 2014, he had 5 wins, 14 top 5s, 20 top 10s, a 12.9 average finish, 2 DNFs, and 2,137 laps led, and that was only in his first year with Stewart-Haas Racing. And Kevin Harvick also won the championship in 2014 over Ryan Newman, Denny Hamlin, and Joey Logano. And while people may argue that Jeff Gordon had a better season and deserved it more, Kevin Harvick was just simply the fastest car all season and had some bad luck. And it was also his first year with an entirely new team and crew chief and such. And I bet that if he had a little bit more luck that year, and if they had known each other for more, he probably would have been a lot more consistent and put together more dominant season, which ultimately he managed to do in 2015, but he didn't get to, claim the dough at the end. But he still managed to get the monkey off his back and finally win a championship in the Cup Series after 14 years. And now we get to 2015, the most infamous year in NASCAR chase history, because Kyle Busch, after getting injured in an Xfinity Daytona race, missed 11 races, got a playoff waiver in the Cup Series, and managed to make it to the Final Four, and he won the race and the championship, while also basically taking a break from 1/3 of the season. And NASCAR said, you know what, that's fine. Let's let him compete for a championship, which I still, even as a Kyle Busch fan, isn't fair to others that he was just able to take a break and still compete for a championship. But I mean, you don't hate the player, you have to hate the game, and NASCAR allowing that type of stupidity to happen. But anyways, getting back onto Kevin Harvick's 2015 season. And so, in his second year driving for Stewart-Haas Racing, he had 3 wins, 23 top 5s, 28 top 10s, an 8.7 average finish, 1 DNF, 2,294 laps led, and he had 13 second-place finishes. And I still think that this is Kevin Harvick's greatest season in NASCAR history, even over his 2018 season where he won 8 times, just because he had 13 second-place finishes, an 8.7 average finish, which was better than 2018, only 1 DNF, and led almost 2,300 laps, which is just insane to think about in the modern-day standards. That's not that far off of Gordon's 1998 season. And they in 2015 they only had like 3 or 4 more races, which is just insanity. And he definitely deserved the title that year. The year before that, in 2014, you could say he was probably one of the top 4 drivers, but he definitely deserved the championship. And it's still sad to see that he didn't get the ultimate prize for the end of the year, and he lost out to some guy who took a break from NASCAR, even if it wasn't his fault, and still ended up winning the championship. So yeah, now we'll get on to 2016. Kevin Harvick in 2016, he definitely regressed a little bit, but he was still a top 4 driver that entire year. He had 4 wins, 17 top 5s, 27 top 10s, a 9.9 average finish, 3 DNFs, and 1,384 laps led. And this is the only year that he didn't make the Final Four in all 6+ years of its existence, which he is the only driver to do that, along with Kyle Busch. If you look at the stats, he and Brad Keselowski and Joey Logano were the only 3 drivers in the entire field to have over 20 top 10s throughout the entire year, which is kind of crazy to think about, that he wasn't even in the Final Four to compete for a championship, and he was relegated to finishing, I think, 8th or somewhere from 5th to 8th in the final standings, which is just a really sad thing to think about. They had an awesome year, and then in the round of 8, having a couple bad races, and then he's just screwed, and he can't even make up the points gap. And guys like Jimmy Johnson, who didn't even have top 10s in half of the year. Jimmy Johnson, the 2016 champion, he only had 16 top 10s that entire year. So not even half of the races he was finished in the top 10. He ended up winning the championship over somebody like Kevin Harvick, which is just BS. But anyways, let's just get on to 2017, which is the year they switched to Fords from Chevy in Stewart-Haas Racing, which is actually a very smart move that they made in hindsight, and I think everybody just thought they would struggle, but it actually paid off dividends for them, considering how all the other Chevy teams ended up struggling so bad in 2018 and beyond with the new Camaro. So Kevin Harvick in 2017, he definitely regressed from the past year. He only had 2 wins, 14 top 5s, 23 top 10s, an 11.1 average finish, 4 DNFs, and only 850 laps led. And it was his worst year with Stewart-Haas Racing, but it was still better than probably all of his RCR years, except for 2010 and maybe 2013. Because he had an underrated season in 2013, I'll tell you that. But for most of his career at Richard Childress Racing, he was just an above-average driver, but could never do what his talent could allow him to because of the subpar equipment. And this year was the only year that Kevin Harvick, I don't really think he deserved to be in the top, I mean, not the top 4, but the final 4. He was more of a top 10 driver that year. But he still managed to finish 3rd in the championship standings, or 4th. And he still managed to pick up 2 wins. And this was the start of his dominance at the Texas Fall Race, the start of his 3 wins in a row, which is still going on, by the way, which is a sight to see. And I'm sure he'll be there to defend his Texas Fall Race dominance when we go there, considering the year he's had along with Denny Hamlin. So all in all, 2017, not the best, but considering they switched to Ford and had to learn an entire new car, and with Tony Stewart leaving, he officially became the number 1 driver on that team. So yeah, basically, this is just a progress year, and they're just building for the next. And on to 2018. Now we get to Kevin Harvick in 2018. He had 8 wins, 23 top 5s, 29 top 10s, an 8.8 average finish, 4 DNFs, and 1,990 laps led. And he was 1 top 10 shy of equaling Gordon's modern era record in NASCAR for the most top 10s in a single season, which is just crazy to think about, considering how consistent Gordon was that year, and he still got screwed out of a title. And him and Kyle Busch, I remember this year, were just basically the class of the field. Martin Truex Jr. was part of the big 3, but I don't think he was as good as these two. They just found something in the data from their cars that just made them in just literally the best of the best, and no one was even close to getting close to their absolute dominance of the field. I remember literally as a Kyle Busch fan watching and just despising whenever Kevin Harvick got into the lead or was in the top 5, because I was scared he would end up winning, and most of the time he did. And his crew cost him a lot of races. I can count the second Dover race, the second Kansas race, and a bunch of others that I probably don't remember anymore that he deserved to win. He and Kyle Busch definitely could have both had 10-plus win seasons, which is crazy to think that with Richard Childress Racing, he only had 1 5-plus win season. That was in 2006. So basically, Kevin Harvick, up to this point, only 1 championship, made the Final 4 again. His car just wasn't suited to racing in the night, and it was much better during the day. Although if a caution didn't come out while Kyle Busch was leading, the race with around 20 to go, I think, he probably would have won the championship, which would have been more fitting than Joey Logano, doing what he did and stealing it out from everyone. Kevin Harvick in 2019 had 4 wins, 15 top 5s, 26 top 10s, a 10 average finish, 3 DNFs, and 953 laps led. And this was also his 3rd year in a row winning the Fall Texas race. And he had certainly regressed again from his form in 2018, where it took him until, I believe, July or early August to win, and that was over Denny Hamlin at the Loudon race. And then he just went on a tear, winning the Brickyard, the Fall Michigan race, and, of course, Texas again. And even though he regressed, just like 2017, he still had a pretty good year. He was about a top 5 driver and was able to hang with the JGR boys in the Final Four and had a chance at winning the entire championship if he had a caution come out after he had pitted, because he was gaining really quickly on all the leaders. But because of the aero package and how nobody could, make a mistake without just being a horrible driver, that his gamble, along with Rodney Childers' gambles, didn't work out in the end, and he ended up finishing 3rd in the final standings, which is still a very good year, and I'm sure a lot of the other competitors would have wanted to have been in his shoes and say that their 2019 was as good as Kevin Harvick's. And now that'll wrap up our year-by-year analysis and breakdown, and we'll get to just some stat comparing between his time at Stewart-Haas Racing and Richard Childress Racing. So in 6 years at Stewart-Haas Racing, Kevin Harvick has had 26 wins, an average of 4 wins per year, rounded down at a rate of about 12%. He has 106 top 5s, which is an average of 18 per year, rounded up, and that's 49% rate, which is almost half his races. Then 153 top 10s, which is an average of 25 per year, rounded down at a rate of 70%. And Kevin Harvick has led 9,608 laps, which is an average of 1,601 per year. He's had an average finish of 10.2 through 6 years, and he's had 25 poles, which is an average of 4 per year and a rate of about 11%. And I want you to keep in mind that he did all of this in just 6 years at SHR compared to RCR's 13 years. At RCR, he had 23 wins, which is an average of 2 wins per year, rounded up at a rate of 5%, 100 top 5s, which is an average of 8 top 5s per year at a rate of 21%, 209 top 10s, which was an average of 16 per year. Not even half of the schedule he had top 10s, so that's a rate of 45% rounded up. He led 4,426 laps led, an average of 340 per year, an average finish of 14.2 throughout 13 years, and he only had 6 poles in 13 years, which is an average of 1 rounded up at a rate of 1%, which is honestly really sad. And now we'll have some additional facts. From 2007 to 2012, Kevin Harvick had 0 poles in about 6 years. From 2014 to 2019, he had 25. And in 2014 alone, he had 8 poles, which was more than he had in 13 years at Richard Childress Racing. And he only had 1 year with an average finish below 11 at RCR, which was an 8.7 in 2010. He's led over twice as many laps at Stewart-Haas Racing in 6 years than at Richard Childress Racing in 13 years. And he's had an average finish of 3 rounded down in the final championship standings at Stewart-Haas Racing versus a measly 9 at Richard Childress Racing, which is still good, but compared to his time at SHR, that's pretty mediocre. And before joining SHR, Kevin Harvick never had led more than 900 laps in a season. But after 6 years there, he led 2,000 plus laps twice and 1,000 plus laps twice. He led 2,000 plus laps in 2014 and 15, and he led 1,000 plus laps twice in 2018 and 2016, which is just insane to think about.